from the Bay Area's local news station. We begin now with breaking news.
We've got the very latest details on the attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. Someone broke into their home in San Francisco this morning and attacked him with a hammer.
About 2:30 in the morning this happened. KRON 4's Sarah Stinson's been out there on the very street where this attack occurred. Sarah, bring us up to speed.
The FBI is on scene and at the Pelosi home here in Pacific Heights neighborhood on Broadway. The FBI just confirmed that it was a man who entered this home, broke into this home, and brutally attacked Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, with a hammer this morning. So before we didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but so far all we know is that a man went in, broke in and attacked Paul with a hammer around 2:30 this morning. Sources say the 82-year-old was specifically targeted by this attacker. Police have been on scene for hours ever since it happened. Of course, the FBI showed up later around 7 o'clock. Paul Pelosi is at the hospital receiving treatment for injuries to his body. He has bruising and severe swelling, but his spokesperson says he's expected to be okay. Officials say a person broke into the home, beat him severely, and was arrested quickly and is currently in custody. We know that it's a man, but we're waiting to find out the age, the name, who is this person, how did they get in, how were they able to break in. Nancy Pelosi was not in the home during the attack. In fact, she was in Washington, D.C. Police are investigating the motive, and of course, we've been wondering all morning long how much security is at this home and in this neighborhood. We talked with neighbors who were shocked to hear what happened. How do you feel knowing this was like a targeted attack on Paul Pelosi?
Terrible. It's very scary. I saw someone suspicious the other morning out here, which I told the police, so I'd be curious to see when I see a picture of the person who did it, if it's the same one.
So she told police what she saw a couple of days ago, which was a suspicious person wandering around the neighborhood and near the Pelosi home. We also heard from another woman who actually lives across the street from the Pelosi's. She knows Paul well, and she says that, you know, there is security from the neighborhood and that a security guard usually sits here on Scott and Broadway. So that's probably how they were able to get to the home quickly and arrest the attacker. But in terms of how much Paul Pelosi's security, how much security he has, that's unclear. We know that when Nancy's in town, they have a lot of security. So stay tuned. We actually are going to hear an update from police and from the district attorney in about 25 minutes from now. Of course, a lot of questions remain, Daria James, but from here at the scene, a lot of people waking up to this news feeling very afraid that someone was able to walk into someone's home, break in, and attack someone, especially knowing it was a targeted attack on Paul Pelosi.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sarah. And we're expecting that update around 9:30. We have team coverage, so we'll go back out live as soon as we can.
Yeah, KRON 4's Will Tran is standing by there, so stay tuned.
9:04. Let's get back to the breaking news and get some more details about the situation where Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked. While she was in Washington, D.C., he was asleep in their home in San Francisco.
Yeah, we've been getting reaction coming in from all quarters across the aisle as well. In fact, earlier we had a chance to speak with political analyst Michael Yockey. He actually was nice enough to join us again here this hour to chat with us some more. And we couldn't have asked for a better person to talk to, Michael, because for a time you were actually Speaker Pelosi's chief of staff. You knew the family well.
Yeah, so can you just tell us what's happening with her staff right now, given what you know about the inner workings when an attack like this happens?
Well, obviously, they're trying to get all the information that they possibly can to relay it to the speaker on a real-time basis. So I'm sure they are coordinating with the Capitol Police, with the SFPD, and apparently the Justice Department has sent a unit out here as well if we read the press reports. But I think that the most important thing is to get information to her as quickly as possible about the condition of Paul. I mean, this is a terrible, horrible event. I'm glad that they're saying that he's going to make a full recovery. But Paul is one of the most decent, really nice people you're ever going to meet. Very low key. You'll see him all around San Francisco. I see him at the airport all the time, or at our favorite chicken joint in North Beach. So, I mean, this is, and that home is a place I've been to many times. It's a beautiful home. It's very warm. It's welcoming, and the idea that it's been desecrated in this way and Paul was attacked in this manner is just horrifying, and I think is something that is just really troubling as to why it occurred. And I guess we'll hear more about that later.
Well, since you knew the home, how could someone break into a home like that? I mean, it seems like it's very secure. We found out that they have neighborhood security. I know the Capitol Police aren't there when Nancy's not there, but neighborhood security all night long. You know, and it seems like a pretty big mansion made of brick. So, I mean, breaking a window, something like that, scaling it?
I mean, I have my own thoughts and ideas, but I'm not going to talk about exactly where someone might want to penetrate someone's home. But I can say this: I mean, anyone who is determined, anyone who has decided, and you know, there's some reports coming out that said that he was targeted.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're meaning the home or Paul personally, but if someone is determined enough and has the resources and means or time, you know, anything, unfortunately, is possible. I mean, this is a country that's seen 5 presidents assassinated. I mean, we've Gabby Giffords, Steve Scalise, not to mention the countless of other people who are just innocent people walking by, who are school children who were shot by someone who attacked a school that was protected by people with guns. I mean, it happens, and it's just a unfortunate fact of the society in which we live in right now.
Yeah, we know the home was targeted. We'll hope to find out more here at the bottom of the hour when police do hold their press conference, and maybe we'll get more insight into the motive. There are reports that the attacker might have asked where Nancy Pelosi was before attacking Paul, so we don't know if Paul was the intended target. We don't know. Maybe we'll find out next half hour. But when you were working with the speaker, when you were on her staff years ago, did you guys have conversations about security, about threats that were coming in? What was that like?
Oh, sure. I mean, in fact, I was probably one of the most paranoid chiefs of staff you're ever going to find, for good reason. You know, we lived in a city where a mayor and a supervisor were assassinated, and we would get death threats and in both writing and over the telephone in our office a lot. When we would go out into public events, you know, she was just a junior congressperson at the time when we started, and then she became obviously more prominent later on. But you know, when we had town hall meetings, it wasn't until I think the second year or so that I decided that I was going to start coordinating with the SFPD because we started having incidents at our town halls. And quite frankly, I considered myself to be sort of her protective detail whenever we went out, because I just did not. Sometimes I had bad feelings about some of the people who we were dealing with, and I would make sure that I interposed myself between her and people. But now, you know, she's got her own detail. It doesn't extend to family.
Yeah, but that was such a long time ago, Michael. Talk about the climate now. I mean, they said that there were close to 10,000 threats on congressional members, 2021.
I mean, basically, we were like a 2, and now it's like 1,020 in terms of the level of threat. And it's something that, you know, this nation has to deal with and refuses to deal with. You still have people who don't believe that January 6th was an insurrection. People who don't believe that people were there with guns, with bats, with shields, you know, with flagpoles, beating on police officers. You know, we have an issue, and until, you know, people begin to understand what is going on out there, how divided our country is, how angry our country is, and we don't know why this was. This could have just been random violence. It could have been someone who was targeting them for what they believe to be money or valuables. But the fact is that we live in a climate and in a country right now where access to the means of violence is easier than ever, and where people are encouraged and really ramped up more so than ever to go from a 0 to an 11 on a scale in terms of anger. And, you know, just as an aside, you know, God knows what's going to happen to Twitter now that they're going to take all the controls off of that, because, you know, repeating the echo chamber of lies and violence and hate is a terrible part of what our country is going through right now. And I pray to God that's not what contributed to what happened to Paul. But if it did, we are going to have to deal with it swiftly and in a very, you know, important manner. I'm sorry, I'm just so upset about the fact that my friend Paul is lying in a hospital bed. So it's a terrible thing.
And Michael, let me just ask you, and we're supposed to go to break. I know we're out of time, and I'm going off script here a little bit. I apologize to the control room. I hope, though, that they can pull up this tweet because the reaction coming in from across political lines sort of marries with what you were talking about here. This is Ted Cruz, somebody who couldn't be more polar opposite in terms of politics from Nancy Pelosi. And here was his tweet moments ago saying, "What happened to Paul Pelosi last night is horrific. Heidi and I are praying for him and Nancy and the entire Pelosi family. May God's protection be upon them. We can have our political differences, but violence is always wrong and unacceptable."
So maybe, both sides of the aisle know this will galvanize them because, they really are under attack as politicians, no matter what.
They got to turn down the temperature.
Well, they got to turn down the temperature, but they didn't do it after Gabby Giffords. They didn't do it after Steve Scalise. Hope maybe this will turn the tide, because one thing about Nancy Pelosi is that she's, no matter what your political beliefs are, people know that she's a really decent, good human being. And they really like her as an individual, and they respect her. That's why she's been the leader as long as she has been. Mm-hmm. That's why she's always been known as someone from both sides of the aisle that is someone who is genuinely just a good person. And maybe this might spur this, but how many times have we said this in the wake of a school shooting? I don't know. Yeah. Maybe this will be the difference maker, but. And I'm not going to cast any aspersions on Ted Cruz at this time, other than say, read his last sentence and then think about what else he has said in other contexts as well. And maybe if he applied that, to January 6th, if he applied that to other situations, we wouldn't have the kind of temperature that we're currently at right now.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you as always.
Thank you.
All right, 9:12. We'll be right back. New details coming into Crown 4 from the Associated Press, very alarming about this attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband. They're saying that the man who was attacking Pelosi's husband with a hammer was shouted, "Where's Nancy?" And Nancy Pelosi was in Washington, D.C. at the time.
And at that point began attacking Paul Pelosi. We have Crown 4's Sarah Stinson in the city right now in front of the Pelosi home. Sarah, what's the latest?
Neighbors in the Pacific Heights neighborhood, they are concerned right now after learning that Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, was brutally beaten with a hammer. He's recovering at the hospital. Meanwhile, at the scene, you can see FBI along with police here investigating. We're seeing Paul Pelosi Jr. at the scene with police, talking with them. He's been on and off the phone and trying to figure out what happened. Of course, just a brutal attack. Sources say the 82-year-old eventually, they said first that he was targeted by his attacker, but as Daria just said, we're hearing now from sources that this intruder yelled, "Where's Nancy?" as he was attacking Paul. Police have been on scene ever since this happened around 2:30 this morning. Paul Pelosi remains at the hospital receiving treatment for injuries to his body. He has bruising and severe swelling, but his spokesperson says he's expected to be okay, and neighbors are glad to hear that. Officials say a person broke into the home, beat him severely, but that man who has been arrested, he is in custody right now, and we hope to learn more about the person arrested within the next 30 minutes. Nancy Pelosi was not in the home during the attack. She was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and you can only imagine how she felt when she got the call about this attack. Police are investigating the motive. In the meantime, we've been catching up with neighbors who are very concerned. How do you feel knowing this was like a targeted attack on Paul Pelosi?
Terrible. It's very scary. I saw someone suspicious the other morning out here, which I told the police, so I'd be curious to see when I see a picture of the person who did it, if it's the same one.
I woke up, I see all the police cars, and I feel very scared, very sad about what has happened to Paul, and I really don't know how it could have happened.
A lot of people just hoping that Paul Pelosi has a speedy recovery, along with President Biden, who says he called Nancy Pelosi himself to say that he's praying for her and for the whole Pelosi family. In the meantime, we're waiting to hear from San Francisco police about The man that they arrested for intruding, breaking in, and attacking Paul Pelosi, that was supposed to be right now, but they pushed back the press conference to 10 o'clock. We've got a reporter there, so we'll have the latest for you. But for now, I'm learning more and more from neighbors about security. It looks as though, certain neighbors, certain homeowners here have security for themselves. They pay for security just to make sure that they are safe in San Francisco, but it's unclear about the amount of security Paul Pelosi has when Nancy Pelosi is not in town. So, Daria, James, something we'll continue to follow. For now, back to you.
Okay, and Sarah, I do want to point out that the viewers can watch that press conference live on Cron On. So as soon as the Cron 4 Morning News is done, just make sure that you flip over to Cron On with your app or go to cron4.com.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, we're also getting reaction, too, from Vice President Kamala Harris. She tweeted out not too long ago, and you can see it on your screen here, quote, "Doug and I are appalled by the attack on Paul Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi's husband. The entire Pelosi family is in our hearts, and we wish him a speedy recovery."
At 9:34, we've been covering the attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, in San Francisco all morning, and doing live interviews throughout the morning on those who are close to the situation and what happens in Washington, D.C. when something like this happens. That's where Pelosi is this morning.
Yeah, we had a chance to chat with Michelle Snell. She's a reporter for The Hill, and it's her beat to follow the speaker. And here's part of our conversation with her earlier. I saw that you just you wrote an article earlier kind of walking people through the events of what happened.
That's right. So there's still a lot that's unknown, but what we do know right now is that San Francisco Police Department responded to an attack at a residence, a break-in at a residence at 2:27 a.m. local time. And then early this morning, Speaker Pelosi's spokesperson put out a statement saying that Paul Pelosi, the husband of Speaker Pelosi, was violently attacked by an assailant overnight in their residence in San Francisco. Paul Pelosi was taken to a hospital, and he's being treated right now, and he's expected to make a full recovery. That's what the Pelosi spokesperson has said. Capitol Police noted in a separate statement that the speaker was in Washington, D.C. overnight with her protective detail when this attack took place. So again, there's still a lot unknown. The motive is unknown, though the suspect is in custody, according to authorities.
Now, Michael, I know the speaker has several events planned for today. Have you had any word from her office as to whether that's canceled now? Is she heading back to the city?
We have not heard from the speaker directly today or from her spokesperson regarding what she's going to do and her whereabouts. She is scheduled to be at an event, speak at an event tomorrow with Vice President Kamala Harris. We have not heard if that will be changed or if it's still going on. So right now, business as usual. But again, we are all waiting to see if we can learn more and when we learn more about what's going on and, of course, how the speaker will be reacting.
And we wonder if it will be business as usual on the Hill, which you cover, because members of Congress have gotten additional money in the past few years for security. But this is sure to have them, clamoring for more to protect them and their families as we're nearing the election and we're seeing more threats against politicians and elected officials.
That's right. According to U.S. Capitol Police, threats against lawmakers and messages of concern have rapidly increased over the past years. Last year, it was around 8,000. Back in 2017, it was about around 3,000 for the year. So again, we've seen this steady increase in threats against lawmakers. And as you mentioned, over the summer, the House Sergeant at Arms had announced a new security program that would give $10,000 to each congressional office to protect their residences with security apparatus. But again, this will likely make more calls for an up in security for lawmakers and their families, just because we're seeing this increase in threats against members of Congress and other lawmakers.
All right, so we'll wait to see if that develops then.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And then I'm sure you talk to your colleagues who cover other political figures there in Washington. Is everybody else sort of reporting the same thing, that there's just sort of this been uptick in, I don't want to call it hate speech, but an uptick in violent speech, to be sure, against people in politics, people connected even tangentially with the elections? Absolutely.
It doesn't even take a journalist or a politician themselves to realize that the political rhetoric has become more divisive over past years. We've seen more attacks launched at lawmakers, more squabbling between them. That, of course, could have an impact on threats that we're seeing against lawmakers. But again, it doesn't take someone who's inside the Beltway to realize that there has been an up in this political rhetoric and this divisiveness, which we're now seeing could really have damaging effects.
Right, and sure has been. That's gotten physical now at this point with Nancy Pelosi's husband. Thank you so much, Michael Schnell, for your reporting this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And it's 9:38. We'll be right back. 9:45, and as we wait for more information from the police, should be within the 15 minutes or so, about this attack on the Pelosi's home in San Francisco this morning. There are a lot of people that are questioning this man with a hammer if he was really after the House Speaker herself, because we understand now the man who attacked Paul Pelosi this morning at around 2:30 in the morning said, "Where's Nancy?" as he was beating Paul Pelosi.
According to an AP source, where's Nancy? Where's Nancy? And when he discovered the House Speaker wasn't there, attacked her husband, Paul Pelosi, instead. And we are getting reaction from a number of people on Capitol Hill specifically. In fact, we've got Adam Schiff now, Representative Adam Schiff, referencing the fact that Nancy Pelosi may have very well been the target. And he tweets, "Sickened by the attack on Paul Pelosi at the family's SF home. While the investigation is ongoing, first reports indicate the Speaker was the intended target of this horrible violence. Praying for Paul's swift recovery, and my thoughts are with the Speaker and their family."
Now, Speaker Pelosi is in Washington, D.C. She is scheduled to speak in an event tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. That was an event with Kamala Harris, so we've gotten response from both President Biden and the Vice President on what's happened. So we're just going to be waiting and following this all morning long. You can go to KRON4.com and listen to KRON On for the very latest. We have 24/7 reports on KRON On.
Yeah, we'll have that press conference there when it happens.
9:55, and we want to leave you with everything we know right now about the attack at Nancy Pelosi's home in San Francisco this morning. It happened around 2:30 a.m. A man with a hammer broke into the home and shouted, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" And then Paul Pelosi, her husband, was home. Nancy was not. He attacked him with the hammer. He's in the hospital now, but it says that he is doing okay. They do expect him to survive. He has injuries to his head and his body.
I was going to say those injuries are pretty severe. Blunt force trauma, they're described as bruising, severe swelling, other injuries as well. But as Dari said, he is expected to make a full recovery, which is at least some consolation. We know that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is in Washington right now, although we did get reports from Sarah Stinson at the scene that she thought she saw what might have been
one of their 5 children.
Junior, on scene talking with police, and we know that we have FBI agents, we have representatives from the Capitol Police, which is in charge of the Speaker's protection when she's in town, and also members of the San Francisco Police Department, which, by the way, we're expecting to hear from here momentarily.
And we want to know more about the motive, because there's a big concern that because he shouted that, he was actually looking for Pelosi and trying to attack her. As you said, she was in Washington, D.C. and is still there now, right?
And that press conference was set for 9:30. It's been pushed till 10. Whenever it does finally happen, we're going to bring it to you live and uninterrupted on KRON On. That's our streaming app, and also on our website at KRON4.com. So you're going to want to make sure you check that this morning and catch that press conference. We'll hopefully learn more about the motive.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going from all angles on this, because there's a lot of question about what's going to happen with protection to congressional members. We've seen an uptick in violence and threats against them as we head towards the election. KRON 4, also your election station. So stay tuned for everything you need to know about this attack in the morning.
All right, that's it for us here on a Friday. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back here Monday morning.